Hello, welcome back. So happy to be here. So we're going to jump right into it. Today we're going to talk about glory in your story. So what is glory? It's a magnificence, it's a great beauty, a splendor, a majesty, a power. When we look in the Bible, glory is the manifestation of God's presence. And so when we talk about glory in someone's story, we want to ask yourself, are you trying to take control of your life in certain areas, whether it be children, finances, marriage, purpose, career? Are you trying to take control, or are you surrendering and allowing God's glory to manifest in your life? So are you serious right now? There's somebody on the swing. All right, so we're just going to keep going. As soon as I start recording, somebody gets on the swing. All right, so I love the story of Esther because God's glory is all in her story. Even though in the book of Esther, you don't hear the word God, you don't see the word God mentioned in the book of Esther, but God is there. And sometimes in our lives, we may be going through something and it may seem like, wow, God, where are you? I feel like I'm all alone. I don't see you moving in my life. I'm going to do this trial, this test, these issues, these challenges. A lot of times in our lives, we feel like God isn't with us. But in Deuteronomy 31:6, it says, be of courage, be strong, and know, and do not have fear, and know that God is with you and that he will never leave or forsake you. So I love the story of Esther because even though it doesn't mention God, God is all in her story. So a little background into the story of Esther. So King Ahasuerus, I practiced this before I started. King Ahasuerus, the king got rid of his queen. So Queen Vashti, she basically, was the queen married to the king, Persian king, and he had this big feast where he was showing off food, wine, just all this stuff. And he wanted to display Queen Vashti as a trophy and just display her beauty in front of all of his friends and things. And so Queen Vashti was like, no, I'm not doing that. And so he basically let her go. He's like, you know what? I dethrone you. You're not queen. And he denounced her. And so then he got lonely. He started looking for a new queen. So long story short, Esther has a cousin named Mordecai. Her cousin Mordecai suggested that she go Esther, go audition to be the new queen. And so Esther could have said, nah, I don't think so. I don't want to do that. She could have just refused to go, but instead she positioned herself. She went, she was sent. God called her and she went. And when she got there, she had favor. So she took that first step to go, to pick up the call. And then when she got there, she had favor amongst the king's attendant and the king, where she was actually chosen to be the new queen. And so once she took that first step of faith, the next step of favor for her to be chosen manifested. God's glory is right there. I mean, she wasn't supposed to be queen. So that's one way that God showed his glory in her story. One thing I love about Esther's story too is that her life wasn't all perfect. There were some haters in her story. So there was a guy who wanted to pass a law to have all the Jews in the land killed. Now, remember, Esther's a Jew. So not only is this law going to kill her people, but also she's at risk to be killed as well. And so because she was in the position of to be queen, she had influence over the king. And she was able to come in and influence the king and basically help him to see, to change his mind about killing off all of the Jews. And if she had not picked up that first call to go and be sent, she would not have been positioned in the palace to be able to actually just prevent the annihilation of all of her people and herself. So it's a beautiful thing. That's God's glory. That's God's glory. Ask yourself, what is God calling you to do? Is there something that he's saying, I want you to go? I need you to do that. Is he asking you to do something or to go somewhere and you're comfortable and you're like, I'm good. I got it made here. I am not leaving. No. So think about that. Think about Esther's story. If she had said no, she wouldn't have been positioned to save her people and to save herself, her own life. But because she picked up the call, she was in a position to actually to have influence where she needed to have influence, God's glory. So God could be asking you to do something very simple. And just really sit before him and say, you know what, God, I've been trying to control all these areas of my life. I've been trying to control my finances. I've been trying to control my spouse. I've been trying to control my career, my purpose, my children, my life. I want to do it the way I want to do it. And maybe you're coming up and hitting roadblocks. Maybe there's a certain area of your life where you keep trying to do it your way and you keep hitting roadblocks and things are not moving. So at that point, you want to step back and you want to say, all right, God, is this me doing it because I want your glory to show up in my story? And so I can look at my own life. There have been times in my own life where I'm like stubborn, not wanting to do what God's telling me to do. You know, I was a single mom for 10, 12 years and I was married before, got a divorce. And in that 10, 12 years, I got lonely. I wanted to get remarried. I wanted to become a wife. I knew that I was a wife and I wanted a husband. But in that journey, I was seeking after all the wrong things. I was seeking for men's attention. I was in different relationships, entering into relationships that were toxic, that actually were not leading me to Jesus. And so I asked myself, you know what? I'm doing the same thing and getting the same ugly results. Let me switch it up and let me see what God has to say about this situation. So I decided to just pull back and say, I'm gonna stop seeking relationship with men and let me seek relationship with God. And then when I started to actually seek relationship with God and want to be in communion with him, his glory just opened up in my story. Things just started moving, roadblocks, things where I had roadblocks in my life were moved. I was able to buy my first home, get promoted, finances got better. So many things got better in my life when I decided to say, you know what, let me just remove control over these areas of my life where I think that I should have control and let me let God work in my life. So I wanted to talk to you about another story with Joshua. So I love the book of Joshua. In the book of Joshua, well, in Joshua's story, I should say, in Joshua's story in Deuteronomy, Joshua had a call to lead the people, to lead the Israelites into the promised land. And so in Deuteronomy 31:6, we see Moses' life coming to an end. So God has told Moses, look, sorry, you're not going to be able to take the people into the promised land. It's time for you to die. So Moses comes in and he basically tells the Israelites, he says, be of courage, be strong, and don't have fear. Don't have fear. The Lord God is with you. He's gone before you, and he will never leave or forsake you. And that's what he told the Israelites. And that's why I want to encourage you today. Don't have fear. Be of good courage. God will never leave or forsake you. And so back to the story of Joshua. So basically, Moses is passing the responsibility over to Joshua to take the people into the promised land. So Joshua, he could have said, I'm not doing that. These people are stubborn. They don't listen. They complain. I am not leading these people into the promised land. But Joshua took the call. He's like, you know what? I believe in my God, and I know that my God is true, and he's faithful, and what he says he will do, he will do. I will pick up this call. So he picked up the call to lead them across the Jordan River. Even that was glorious. So Joshua picks up the call. They get to the Jordan River, and they can't cross it. The river's so deep, they can't cross. So what does God do? He splits the river so that they can walk on dry land. Like, that's God's glory. Joshua couldn't have done that on his own. He had no power in his own control to do that. God split the river so he could walk on dry land and cross, so that his people could cross into where they needed to be to get to the city of Jericho. God's glory right there. All right, so they get to the city of Jericho. And once they get there, I mean, imagine the city. It just has huge walls, surrounded by walls. Just can't be penetrated, can't be broken. It's just a huge fortified city with walls. So on his own, Joshua wouldn't have been able to get into that city because they had guards, they had all types of security and protection you could imagine. And so he's like, okay, God, I surrender. What is it that you need me to do? And so God gives him the most simplest instructions. I love the instructions that God gives him. God says, when you get to the city of Jericho, I want you to march, you and your people, march around the city once a day for 6 days. And then on the 7th day, you're going to march around 7 times and you're going to shout a glorious noise. You're going to shout and shout and shout and blow your trumpets. Joshua did it. Day 1, day 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He marched around 6 times. And think about what he looked like. He probably looked really crazy from the outside world. Like, what is this guy doing? The people in the city of Jericho are probably looking at them like, y'all look crazy. What are you doing? But he knew what God had for him and he did it anyway. So what are some things that may make you look crazy to the world, but you know that God is telling you to do it? Do it and be obedient, because God will fulfill his promise for you. So 7th day, they marched around 7 times, blew the trumpets, the walls of the city smashed, fell to the ground. Then they were able to go in, take the city, burn the city. They were able to take the city, that land, so that they could get their promised land. If Joshua had said, no, I'm not doing it, they wouldn't have had their promised land. They wouldn't have been able to have God's promises fulfilled over their life. But Joshua was obedient. So ask yourself, what are some things in your life that you're being disobedient about? You know that God told you to do that thing. You know that God told you to start that business. You know that God told you to cut that relationship off. You know that God told you to read that book. Simple things. It could be something so simple or it could be something so big. But just trust him and know that he's got you. He said he will never leave or forsake you. Even if you don't see him in your life, we're moving, just know that he is behind the scenes working on your behalf. He wants the best for you. Just trust him and believe in him and know that he's with you. Let God be the glory in your story. Stop controlling it. Let his glorious presence manifest in your life to where you look back and you're like, wow, that was only God. I couldn't have done that on my own. I couldn't have. I mean, there are things that we can control ourselves, but why? Why settle for good when you can have grand, you can have great? Let God's grand glory manifest in your life. All right, so I have some action items for you today. I want you to ask yourself, what are some areas that you're trying to control and you're hitting roadblocks and you know that God wants to do something in that area of your life? Ask yourself, is it finances? Is it career, purpose, business, spouse, children, family? Ask yourself, take a look at yourself and do an examination of yourself and say, you know what, I've been trying to control that area of my life. Let me surrender my whole life. You don't just want to surrender one part of your life. Surrender everything, your whole being. This life is not ours. This life does not belong to us. It is God's. So surrender all of it. And next, I want you to be intentional about spending time with God. Be intentional about that. Be intentional about spending time with God. There are so many things that people are intentional about. They get up, they go to work, they get their paycheck, they cook, they clean. They're intentional to cook a meal. They're intentional to eat. They're intentional to go travel. They're intentional to go to work. Let's be intentional about spending time with the Almighty God who created us, who knows us, who's gone before us. Let's be intentional about spending time with him, because that time is very valuable. And when you're spending time, go into your quiet space. So reduce noise, distractions, you and yourself, wherever you can focus the most. Maybe you go to the park, or maybe you're in a closet, or maybe you're in a quiet room, or it's just you and God, no one else, and just really just talk to him. Sometimes I like to talk to him by journaling. I'll write down my thoughts and then I let him talk to me. But just really be intentional about spending time with him so that you can hear from him. And take it day by day. Like sometimes I'll just ask him, what do you want me to do today? Like a lot of times we want to say, what do you want me to do with my whole life? Just take it day by day. And then what you'll see is as you take those steps of faith, of obedience day by day, your whole life it becomes clear. You have more clarity like over the vision of your life. So be intentional about spending time with him. And then also surrender. Surrender how you think your life should go and how you think, and then really ask God, who did you create me to be? Like, you created me for a purpose. What did you call me to do? And really look at your gifts and your talents and how you can use them to glorify God. And just surrender and stop trying to control everything. Don't be a control freak. Let God come in and let his glory show in your story. Because that's when you're going to see the magnificence and the beauty and just the splendor of God show up, where you're like, wow, only God did that. So I just want to encourage you today, to ask yourself, where do I need to surrender my life? Write it down, make a list, write the vision, make it plain, and then spend time with him intentional every single day. Time is valuable. It's the most important resource that we have, the most valuable resource that we have. How are you spending your time? Don't let time just pass you by and you look up and you're like, whoa, where did my life go and what did I do with my life? So spend time with him, enjoy his presence, worship, pray, and just allow his glory to flow through your story. And I guarantee you, like, you will be amazed at how God moves. You will have more joy, more peace, more love, more purpose. You will just enjoy life and you will wake up excited every day to do life. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.